the hand mic. Okay, so welcome to the second panel. Whoops. How's the sound? Okay? Okay, it sounds better. So this is about, and it's a great follow-on, as Karina said from the last panel, because it's all about financing quantum. Is it a dream or is it a nightmare? Great title, Karina, brilliant title. And I think we have a really illustrious panel here. We've got investors, we've got some innovative deep tech entrepreneurs. So what I'm going to do to start off with is if you could just do a quick intro, if we just go through, start with you, Ekaterina, and then we'll go into some questions, and I've already gone dead. No, come back.
So my name is Ekaterina Almaskei. I'm a general partner at the venture capital firm called OpenOcean. We are an early stage investor across Europe, and we invest in quantum, but not only quantum. So our firm started with creating one of the first technology unicorns out of Europe, which is called MySQL. This is the largest database, you know. And I am actually a seed investor in a company called IQM out of Finland, so hardware. And this company has attracted, I think today, by far the largest financing round as of today in Europe.
Great, thank you.
Hello, and I'm Stuart Woods. I'm Chief Operating Officer and Strategy Officer at Quantum Exponential. We are a 100% quantum investment fund. Currently, we have about 7 portfolios, companies running everywhere from quantum computing, quantum sensing, and then quantum networking and encryption.
My name is Dr. Alana Wisby. I'm a deep tech entrepreneur and the CEO of Oxford Quantum Circuits. We are Europe's leading quantum compute as a service company, so we build quantum computers and provide enterprise-ready quantum to our customers by deploying them into the world's existing digital infrastructure, that is putting them into data centers. In the context of this panel, I've raised £40 million to date and making really good headway on my Series B. Thank you.
Hopefully, yes, this works. So my name is Candace Johnson. I'm delighted to be here. I'm a serial space entrepreneur. Many of you may have known me for having started SES and built it to become the world's largest satellite company. I am also today the chair of the advisory board of Seraphim Space. We are also the world's largest space tech venture fund. So we are one of the people who have invested in quantum, and we are indeed, our portfolio is looking very good. I would like to make 3 points, if I may, just real quickly. One, I could not agree more with Karina about AI and quantum. I just come from Sophia Antipolis, where my second home is, and I have been telling them they are one of the AI excellent centers. I've said we absolutely have to put the quantum as the base to this. The second thing is I'd like to just do a shout out for IBM, because when they did in 2016 make available the access to the supercomputer at Watson, et cetera, this really did democratize, I think, quantum. And then the third thing, to our wonderful Marina and Ila, you know, in 2006, I did the Symphony of Machines. And I think for everybody here, it's very important to understand that, yes, I did the 2006 Symphony of Machines, and I had neural networks and Ubuntu. But in 2022, I did the Symphony of the Environment, and I had a composer. And what is very important for all of us to remember is that quantum, AI are just technologies, but we need the hand of the master. We need the human mind. Thank you.
Super, well thank you very much. Great introductions there. Let's start off though just by talking about the general financial trends there are for deep tech. And is quantum really so much more complex? Ekaterina, let me start with you and then I'll go to Stuart. I won't go all up and down the panel, we'll just do you two to start.
Well, where to start? Deep tech is hard, and it comes and goes. The fashion for deep tech is coming and going, and it's really making it difficult. Quantum is a little bit different than general deep tech. Why? Because there is geopolitics involved. there is so much these barriers actually, even for the companies to grow, and maybe Lana, you can talk more about this, but there is all this notion like we need to be the best. Like even in previous panel there was discussion like we need to win the race against. So when we, for example, we have European champions, European companies, and we go out to raise capital, let's say from the US, and we need this growth capital, we typically go to the US and raise this capital. In the case of quantum, is actually much harder. There is often what we hear is like, yeah, we have backed already some US companies, we don't need European. And then at the same time, last year we saw that 30 billion has been invested on the governmental level, on the state level, across global, and half of that was invested in China. So when we look in Europe, we don't have the same level of support, and even different programs that are announced. When we look at this as an investor, we are like, wow, this is too thin. This is too small to actually make a difference. So this is my opinion, maybe.
Yeah, sure.
You have the same sort of...
From our standpoint, yes, quantum is complicated. I think the other thing that you have to remember is that not every quantum company should be a quantum computing company. I think investors today try to make every possible quantum company a quantum computing company because they feel they can get better valuations. But the ecosystem does need everything from control architectures all the way to software, and as we heard earlier from Katrina, sensors as well, right? So not every quantum company should be a quantum computing, and it's up to the investors to control that. I think the other point is that there is an element of what we'll call quantum inspired, right? And this involves an understanding of quantum where, looking at a quantum company, if 75% of its revenue is from classical computing, is it actually a quantum computing company? And is it actually generating IP in quantum? And these are the elements that you have to understand when you're looking at investing.
And does quantum sensing, and maybe you could explain that with a couple of examples, is quantum sensing going to make it quicker than anything else?
I think if so, it will. I mean, quantum sensing is basically a bad quantum computer that's been calibrated for a different environment. Right. That's what it comes down to. And we can make lots of bad quantum computers. We do that all the time. And so from that standpoint, yes. And the ability to actually get to the point of having clocks, which are quantum clocks, that allow us to tell the time independent of New York and London without the synchronization of satellites, which the Chinese can take out, there is a motivation geopolitically to accelerate that. So not only are we motivated from a technology standpoint, but it is also something that is truly applicable.
Right. So let's just talk a little bit about pricing at the moment, because there's been quite a few rounds, internal rounds, there's some down rounds. Ilana, maybe we could come to you. What's your view at the moment? Is it more, they're saying it's more realistic valuations at the moment? Is it more realistic? What's your view?
Look, I think we need to look at quantum as an area that sits in obviously a broader market, and of course the broader markets have taken a downturn, so yes, there is some sort of broader market dynamic of normalization, particularly across in the US, that is having an impact on valuations no matter what company you are. Now, for something like a standard SaaS business, it renormalizes based on some sort of return of multiples on revenue. It's quite kind of still simple and easy to value. When you then have, and this probably speaks to one of the challenges of investing in quantum, you're investing and you've got to set valuation on something where there's no real valuation traction milestone markers in the same sort of standard formats that would exist in how you'd measure the value of, say, a software company. And Europe particularly is more used to investing in software as opposed to typically investing in hardware. So I think it adds an element of fun ambiguity to the whole equation. But to speak from personal experience and also knowing the other companies that are raising right now, not just in quantum but in deep tech, good companies are getting funded, right? Good companies are still getting funded, and yes, we know that a flat round may actually now be equivalent to a 50% uplift. An uplift is even more incredible. It's not necessarily following the same valuation trends as before, but money is still flowing. We are seeing the public markets open up in the US. We're now seeing that translate across as the markets pull through. So good companies are still getting funded, and I think that's still true in quantum as well.
Right, and I'm going to come back to you because I know you did a really good article
thanks.
on that, and I'm going to ask you to share some of that. But Candice, maybe you could just say a word on where you feel pricing is and valuation.
First of all, I think, valuation, as my father said, who was one of the first VCs working for Kleiner Perkins in the United States and then helped do the Israeli Startup Nation, valuation really is in the eyes of the beholder. So I think that's one thing. But I'd like to come back to your point earlier about quote unquote quantum being complex to understand. You know, when we first started SES, world's largest satellite system, by the way, in 1983, and we were doing satellite television. We were the world's first direct satellite television. Now, for years, people would show slides and they would have a gateway terminal here, they would have the satellite here, and they would have the reception terminal here. And so every single satellite company that you saw, they would provide this graphic. We didn't provide that graphic. We provided a screen with 16 different television channels. That is what SES was about. It was about bringing freedom of choice. It was about bringing more entertainment. It was about bringing diversity. And so today, when we talk about quantum, be it mechanics, sensing, networks, whatever, we need to talk about basically bringing, making the impossible possible, bringing simplicity to a complex problem, doing predictions that will not only help us do COVID vaccines, but that will also most likely help us resolve the climate change and the environmental problems. These are what we need to talk about. This is the vision that we need to sell.
Yeah, so good vision and good ideas, some use cases. Stuart, you and I were talking outside about how the investor base is changing a little bit. Sovereign wealth funds, mix of public-private. Do you want to just expand on that, and then I'll ask Ekaterina afterwards?
I think it goes back to what was discussed at the earlier panel, right? We do know that there's a timeline here for maturity.
Yeah.
And I think some of this comes back to challenges that Alana's having. I mean, to be honest, cooling, 75% of the quantum technologies for computing use some form of cooling. And reality has it, as they move into the data center, to be honest, they shouldn't be on Alana's balance sheet, right? They should be on the facility side of the data center. So I think, when you're looking at this, you have to sort of understand the progression of the technology and look forward to being able to anticipate the point which is not that far off when Alana's business is incredibly profitable. And you have to have a pragmatic approach of what that end architecture looks like, which is exactly what Candice was saying about, you're delivering television, right? Or entertainment, right? And I think understanding that from an investor base, that does take a different type of client or investor. And that is driving larger funds and where do they actually participate.
It's someone who can understand the vision, really.
Absolutely.
And see the picture at the end of it.
Well, and to understand that you're going to have an Atlas Copco or someone similar coming into a data center to really change the way things are done.
Yeah.
And I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but I do think the quantum data centers need to be on the moon.
Yes, and we'll come to that, I'm sure. Ekaterina.
Whether it's changing.
I mean, do you think that's true, that the investor base is changing a lot?
Well, I think the quantum computing attracts a different type of investor in the first place, and I think let's look historically how venture capital grew in Europe. So the rise of venture capital came with SaaS, basically. Sorry for using jargon, by the way. But software, basically software, scalable businesses where you understand the economic model and you can invest in growth, knowing how much it costs. So deep tech traditionally wasn't part of the venture capital in Europe. Like there were few people doing this, but minority. So now with the rise of actually deep tech topics, we see a lot of interest from traditional markets like the likes of US big venture funds But again, because of geopolitics, there is difficulty. So what we see actually in quantum, there are a lot of families, like large industrial families in Europe, who buy the vision, who want better future for their kids, who invest in climate, tackling the climate problem, and also healthcare systems. They do invest. They believe, they say, well, we want to vote with our capital for our future, for better future. And it's an interesting phenomenon. We haven't seen this before, actually.
Is that, but that's quite small pools of capital.
It's actually quite a large.
Is it?
It
So
is
it's
like,
growing.
you know, Europe is driven by very successful manufacturing and industrial families. So, but it's not a traditional, not the type of capital we are used to seeing this type of investments.
Yes, which is why it's changing. And as Lana said, though, when the market is on a general downturn, the whole market's going to be down. So given that financing might be restricted, why would you not see more M&A, do you think?
I don't think that the market is mature enough for M&A.
Right.
You know, these companies, you know, they do have visionary founders. They are people.
So we're on a pipe dream at the moment, then. It's
Well,
dreaming,
no,
pipe dream.
no. You also, not only, you know, is valuation in the eyes of the beholder, but you also need to choose your investors.
Right.
You need to choose.
So you do have to work harder.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. And, you know, besides being a venture capitalist, I'm also an angel investor.
Right.
And, you know, I don't need to worry about anybody else's money except for my own. I can spend as much time as I want on that company,
Right.
you know, et cetera. So, and, you know, I do think that it is frightening. So let us say that, you know, there's $36 billion that have been invested in quantum. 16 billion of it has been done by China. UK, 4.36 billion. Absolutely fabulous. You're number 2. Number 3 is US, number 3.75. Number 4 is Germany, 3.36. Number 5 is Canada. So, you know, I do think it is these family offices
Right.
who are looking towards the future and who are investing their own money
Right.
and are willing to build. You know, we're talking more and more now about venture builders.
Right.
And, you know, in the old days with the VCs, and I can say this because I'm 70, you know, the VCs did used to work with the entrepreneurs. And they would put in a CEO, they would put in a CFO, et cetera, and they would really help them build their value proposition. We don't see that so much anymore. But with the venture builders, we do.
So it's sounding like it's not a nightmare, but it's a selective dream. Come in,
I
Stuart.
was going to say that we're probably about 1997, 1998 for those of us that lived through the telecom boom. And we're getting to the point where we're getting quite a few
Right.
dog food companies.
Right.
And they are going to consolidate over the next year.
Right.
And I think there are already smaller consolidations happening, right? Because, you know, when you have common platforms like in quantum clocks,
Right.
you do need to start to aggregate the applications. And there are mergers happening. And I think the next step, we'll see hardware companies buying software companies in order to add their value and expand their strength
Yeah.
and their
And-
proposition.
Yeah, maybe Ilana now's, sorry Candice, maybe Ilana now's a good time for you to share, because you wrote a really good reflective article on fundraising, and maybe just share some of the lessons that you learned. I know the audience would be pleased to hear that.
Yeah, sure. Before I do, I actually have some other additional insights just on obviously live data, because we're engaging with the market right now, and I can tell you a few stats on what
Yeah.
that's looking like. And actually, we don't, you know, we have engaged with family offices, and you're right, they are kind of wanting to build vision for prosperity, but actually 30% of our pipeline CVCs, 54% are standard kind of private VCs, and then 16% is the sovereign wealth, typically APAC. So we're seeing huge amounts of market traction across APAC, UK. So I've got 7 interested leads in the data room, and one of them is UK. One of them is UK. The rest is APAC.
Right.
Okay.
That's
And
still exciting.
it's very exciting, and there's more I can't share. But what's really exciting also is seeing the kind of the global investment level. 30-something% of our engagement is still with the US, but the US has been slower to move. but now is picking up. So I think that's just worth additional reflection point there. Yeah, look, I wrote a piece. If you want to read it on Medium, you can find it. It's 38 lessons learned, raising £38 million. I think honestly, it's just kind of any sort of sales deal reflection piece. But you asked me to pick out three to share. I think number one is that this is like a glass ball. So it's just like imagining the deal always as this incredible fragile glass ball, and you don't want to hold it too tight, because if you hold it too tight, you hold the deal too tight, you'll smash it, right? It'll get too tense, you'll smash it. If you hold it too loose, you'll drop it. But that's your ball, and you've got to hold that ball as the CEO in every single moment. And you do not put the ball down until the money is, of course, in the bank. So right now, you may not see it, but I'm holding quite a big glass ball. The second one is around preparation. I love the phrase, like, just prepare to be lucky. You don't fall to your highest standards, you fall to your highest level of preparation. So if you really prepare, that's really when luck comes through to fruition. So I will probably out-prepare most people at most things, which is probably some sort of childhood trauma, but is working out very well for us all. The next one here, and the final one, and I think this speaks to a lot of what we've been talking about, it's all just emotional intelligence. Like, seek to understand before being understood. And really, this is all about relationships. It's all around people. We're talking about quantum, and you spoke earlier, you said a lovely phrase about trying to bring simplicity from the complex. And it's all storytelling, but it's not just story as in something made up. These are true narratives that you have a responsibility to be able to communicate effectively, simply, in a way based on emotional intelligence that you can help somebody understand. Because by understanding the language in the world of VCs, I know that poor person at the end of the phone has to go back to their IC on Monday and try to explain what you've just told them in the last 30 minutes in a 5-minute session. But then there's also the emotional intelligence, the other side, and that's really where the partnership comes to light. And the first thing I did before starting to raise the Series B was to go out and reread that and reflect on all of those lessons and think about how I'd apply them to make this process even more successful.
And so, yes, when you're talking about the preparation, I know you're not just talking about having a good data room. It's
beautiful though.
I'm sure it is, knowing you, I'm sure it's absolutely a beautiful data room. But it's more about trying to anticipate, I think, some of what family offices are after, because I deal with a lot of family offices, obviously. And I think it's trying to anticipate where they appreciate that forethought. I don't know if you've got any words on that.
Yeah, so certainly whoever you're engaging with, right, it's not just turning up and throwing up. It's really thinking, who am I talking to? What are their interests? If it's a family office, it's probably making sure that you're buying into their family mission or their family vision. How can I help them see the offer and how that's going to align with their purpose as a family office? The same, with the preparation of, if you're going to a specialised fund, or in being able to ask the right questions and go in prepared. And then, of course, negotiation, right? Who wins in the negotiation? Like, the person wins. The person, ultimately, you want to come to the best outcome for all parties, but you do that by really being prepared. And there's the preparation, shouldn't really be telling you all this, because I might be on the other side of the table with you at some point, but there's a wonderful negotiation one prep sheet. Of course, it's just from the standard. But all of these different tools are fantastic.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. And I know, Candice, you've already said a little bit about this, but you have obviously a long-standing experience of satellites and more recently on space. How is that going to interact with quantum? How do you see that developing?
Well, it's interesting because
it sounds very exciting.
It is, it's thrilling, I'm living the life. I love it. But let us talk just a little bit about preparation and about that vision, because, in 1983, when we started SES, we did a European footprint, not a Western European footprint, but a European, East and West European footprint. We launched in 1988, December 13th, 1988, and and on November 9th, 1989, the wall fell down. So now that is also about being prepared. So as it happens, with Seraphim, we invested, almost our first investment was in ARKit. So a QKD, company. Satellites are very good for quantum key distribution because you can't break the line of trust. And so, did we know, very, very unfortunately, that Ukraine was going to be invaded? No. But when it came, we were ready. as were our SARS satellite systems, etc. So, you know, today we are space really and quantum, you know, are almost a perfect marriage. So space is excellent. Satellites are excellent for QKD, quantum key distribution. They're excellent for what we were talking about, the sensing, the GPS, the automotive self-driving, the atomic clocks, etc. And they are also very good for now, of course, I've forgotten what they're very good at. They're very good, and this is something that not that many people are really talking about, for satellites. Now, you notice that China did a quantum satellite. And why is that important? That is important because we're going more and more towards onboard processing. And if we can put more of the onboard processing onto satellites, then we do not need to worry about transmitting all of the data down to Earth to be analyzed by AI. This is something that people haven't quite gotten their fingers about. Now, let me fast forward, because I really was not facetious about putting the data centers on the moon, the quantum data centers on the moon. Now, this is very, very exciting. And why is that? Because here again, we will only be, you know, sending down to Earth what we need. But what we are seeing is a space-in-space economy. You know, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, whoever, they all talk about $1 trillion economy. That $1 trillion economy in space is going to be space stations, it's going to be robotics, it's going to be AI, it's going to be the metaverse, it's going to be 3D printing. All of that needs to be driven by quantum computing. And so I really do see this beautiful marriage between quantum and space to help us go, you know, to the next horizon.
Okay, well, thank you. And you mentioned AI. Karina mentioned the power of AI and quantum. So we know that some AI valuations have been quite high. So do we think that the way forward is to put the two together, is to somehow link that together? I'm looking at you, Ekaterina, and then maybe Stuart. So is that where you think, is that's going to, whether it's data centers or other parts of the ecosystem, do you think pairing the two together will help drive valuations?
Well, it's already happening. So artificial intelligence is one of the use cases, so I don't think we have to do a lot in this sense. But what we can do is to learn a lot from artificial intelligence, experience how the industry has developed and maybe take the best out of it and not to repeat the same mistakes. So one thing, so when artificial intelligence started to happen, it was pretty obvious for those who were involved in the industry that traditional compute power doesn't work, right? So we needed accelerators, and then NVIDIA came with GPUs, and it was kind of like the best available processor for artificial intelligence. But the idea in the market was that actually, no, there will be some other accelerators, special accelerators. So there was investment, a lot of investment gone into competitors of NVIDIA and competition for GPUs. What we see now, NVIDIA is by far taking the whole market. It became so big, and I mean, I'm joking very often, we should have all put money into buying just public stock of NVIDIA rather than trying to, don't quote me on this one, but you know, so now the question is, we have now the same opportunity in quantum actually to create a quantum accelerator that will actually power a lot of this new innovation, a lot of quantum algorithms. The question is, can we do it in a sensible way that we have really big winners, but not one winner takes all? Because we are working on so many parallel technologies and approaches, and actually each approach is very, you know, is very unique and will power certain type of applications much better than the other one. So can we somehow be smarter this time and create several winners? You know, this is number one. Number two, I just talk about briefly is software part, because in the software part, we already take quantum-inspired approach, right? We have Multiverse that speaks later, that have already implemented this quantum-inspired mechanisms to solve some of the real today's problems, like optimization of large matrix. So this is already happening. The question is when actually we merge the quantum hardware approach with the software, so we actually have the real powerful artificial intelligence system. Because in the ideal world, we would like to build this general intelligence. Today we have a lot of approximations in artificial intelligence. We want to build general intelligence. We want to build systems that learn on the fly. With today's compute power, it's not possible. So can we use these quantum advantages on the hardware side to actually build this intelligence we need? So this is just 2 points maybe.
Yeah, no, good points, Stuart. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. I think the first thing, I agree with Katrina in that nations that don't invest in quantum are going to fall behind, just as those who have not invested in AI will fall behind. Sure. AI is not the answer, right? You know, it is going to be a hybrid solution involving QPUs, CPUs, and GPUs, right? We can't.
Or something else. Sorry.
Yes, it'll probably be on the moon. You know, from that standpoint, I think we have to take a step back and understand that you can't dump, you know, regenerative sized data sets on a quantum computer. There will be certain solutions and certain questions which will be fundamentally correctly used on quantum computers. And those will probably be very natural or chemistry related or even optimization related. But you know, to think that we're going to have a chat GP based upon quantum computers 100% is unlikely. It will not necessarily handle that kind of data sets at this point.
Right, and you're sort of answering my next question, which is, you know, which part of the quantum or the quantum technologies is the capital heading? We've talked about hardware, we've talked about sensing, communication. Where do you think right now it's heading?
Well, we're probably going to end up probably about 50 to 60% of our next fund will be sensor based.
Okay, oh, that's interesting. And what about you, Tamika? What's your view?
Well, we are an early stage investor. We have a philosophical view that we first need to solve hardware and then software build on top of that. So we are investing in hardware, and I really like Ilana, also what you're doing. We are big fans of your hardware building. So now the paradox today is that majority of growth investors invest in software.
That's so right.
So
yes, that's so true. Right.
Exactly. So now we are saying, okay, so we are trying to build this a lot of hardware, but actually growth capital is all in software. So how do we do this? So I don't know if you have seen the same a little bit in your.
You know, please go ahead.
I'm a hardware person. I'm a manufacturing person. And of course, the innovation can always come from someplace where you were least expecting it. You know, so for instance, here again, and I just use SES because it is so well known, but the innovation was not in the satellite. The innovation was in the gallium arsenide outdoor electronics that were 10 times more powerful than the existing ones, and therefore could have a satellite, could receive a satellite off the shelf with just 25-watt traveling wave tubes instead of 250-watt traveling wave tubes. So the innovation always comes from somewhere else. And that is why I did point out IBM, because it basically, you know, it's collective intelligence. Now, couldn't agree more with you, you know, Stuart, about the sensors. I am so into sensors. But, you know, I do think, so I kind of tell the world, you know, I use satellites to provide universal access, then I use satellites to access the universe. And now what I'm trying to do are networks for the universe. Networks for the universe, because with James Webb Telescope, we have deep space, we have the near space, and we have the planet. So we have one space. And so now we can talk about transport networks, logistic networks, habitat networks, you know, communities on the moon. How are we going to communicate? How are we going to get energy? I'm working on a space-based solar power, network where we'll be gathering the rays from the sun and bringing them down via microwave and putting them in the grid. So all of these networks, all of these complex systems really will need to have quantum as well.
And Alana, I don't want to leave you out of this view. So are you a hardware first person?
Well, evidently. But we do build the full stack, right? So we build the control hardware, control software. We recognize we're building computers, they're ultimately systems. And that means we do require a lot of software. And the focus, even though, of course we build hardware, our vision at OQC is all about building that brighter quantum-enabled future and putting quantum into the hands of humanity, into the hands of customers as quickly as possible so that they can run algorithms so that we can start making an impact. And that really defines everything we do. So for there, we partner with wonderful companies like Multiverse and others to help support customers on that journey. I think 4% are quantum advanced, i.e. they literally come to us and say, passes the algorithm, passes the API, we've got the algorithm. They want to own the algorithms and hold on to that IP. And then around 70% of the market right now are early movers, so they do need a bit more hand-holding, a bit more support. We don't want to have to do absolutely everything. But that does mean we can explore, and you spoke there earlier about AI and quantum. We have lots of different AI quantum projects, one of which Stuart will need to brief you on later because it is an Innovate UK funded project called Chat Quantum GPT. But it's a way of bringing other kind of companies into the ecosystem and really thinking about, yes, we know this isn't going to provide significant quantum advantage today, but how do we make sure that we're helping support the ecosystem through OQC Labs develop and learn and overcome the barriers to access, because the customers want to run algorithms, they want to put real data on it, particularly the banks, right? Want to run it with real data, but you can't do that in an R&D environment where it has to be enterprise-ready quantum computers in data centers, part of the existing co-located infrastructure, so that customers can run algorithms with real data. But yeah, so even though we're a hardware company from birth, spin out from Oxford, core IP, very much hardware focused, having that focus on impact and customer experience from the outset is so important.
And Alana, I think the banks are one thing, but I think the reinsurance companies, those are your, low-hanging fruit.
Well, let's hope that's part of the dream. I know we're down to just sort of under 3 minutes, so if I'm going to quickly scan the room, unless there's one really burning question, I think what we're going to do is thank this panel, because I think it's been terrific. I think you're telling us there's a dream. It's not a nightmare. Well done. Thank you so much.
Diana,
Candace is going to have the last word, but it's going to be 30 seconds.
Okay, no, I always tell entrepreneurs not to dream, but to have a vision, because visions get realized, dreams do not. So I would just say it's a vision, a good vision.
We'll end on that note. Vision and dreams. Thank you.